Hi, everybody. It's a great honor to be interviewing David Oyelowo. He is, you know, the great star of so many good movies. He's been in The Butler, starred in that. He served as Martin Luther King in Selma. Obviously was nominated for that role. He's been in Lincoln, so many others. But he's coming up on a very important movie that's dear to my heart because it's a true story that involved the book Purpose-Driven Life. And I want to welcome David to Saddleback. Let's give him a warm welcome right now. Hi, David.
Hi. It's such a pleasure to be talking to you. I'm sorry I'm not able to be there in person. It's because it's my 17th wedding anniversary, and my wife and I are on our way to Northern California to celebrate it. So otherwise, I would be with you.
Well, to Northern California?
Yes, yeah.
Fantastic.
I'm not even sure exactly where, but it's a beautiful house that we found out about. So we're headed there now.
Well, that's great. I grew up in Northern California, actually in the Redwoods.
Oh, wow.
So
well, I think we're near Yosemite. So yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a few questions. After having served and, in the role of Dr. Martin Luther King, you then took this role of a criminal. What caused you to take this role, and what attracted you to this story?
Well, in playing Dr. King, I guess as a Christian, it's obvious why you would want to step into those incredible shoes. In a sense, playing Dr. King was a seminal moment for me. It's a truly amazing thing as a person to know that you have already done one of the greatest things you will ever do with your life while you're doing it. And that's how I feel about having played Dr. King. But stepping into the shoes of Brian Nichols, as you say, was a very, very different prospect. I was less drawn to playing Brian than I was drawn to the effect this event had on Ashley Smith. And as a Christian myself, I was just so taken with the fact that you have a murderer and a meth addict holed up together for 7 hours. Somehow, out of that comes salvation, hope, redemption, and Ashley Smith in particular stepping into a new chapter of her life where she gets her life back. And so for me, as a person who works in Hollywood, who often what comes out of Hollywood is not edifying, is not godly, doesn't have a moral compass, certainly doesn't hint at true hope, this was a story that I just knew I had to be part of seeing come to fruition. And having played Dr. King, that gave me the platform, that's given me the notoriety to take a film like Captive to a studio like Paramount, who distributed Selma, and say, this is a story I really want to back and want to see told, because at its heart is just the theme of the miracle of a second chance.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. When that story broke, I was actually in East Africa. I was working at an AIDS hospice in Rwanda, and I came home and I was tired, and I flopped down on the bed in the motel room I was staying in, turned on the TV on CNN, and there was Larry King telling the story, holding up Purpose-Driven Life, and telling the story of how the hostage crisis had ended, and that Brian had turned himself in. What do you think, David, was the role of hopelessness in starting this whole chain of events with Brian?
Well, one of the most incredible things Ashley Smith said to me, she was with us on the film for a lot of the shooting of it, was she said when Brian Nichols broke into her apartment that day, because she had watched on the news with a lot of Atlanta, in fact, a lot of the nation, and seen that this guy had killed 4 people that morning, having broken out of the courthouse jail. Little did she know that 45-minute drive away from Atlanta, Georgia, to where she was in Duluth, Georgia, suddenly Brian Nichols would turn up on her doorstep and break into her apartment. And she felt when he broke into her apartment that day that it was God's way of saying, you've messed up too much, you deserve death. That's how she felt. So she was on that kind of downward spiral whereby she was basically saying, I deserve this. I deserve this murderer, this killer breaking into my apartment, and this is the end.
So she was feeling pretty hopeless.
She was hopeless.
Yeah.
She had lost custody of her daughter. Her husband had died, had been murdered in a drug-related incident. She couldn't shake this drug. So she was in a place of hopelessness. But what happened was that Brian Nichols held a gun to her head and told her to take meth, the very drug that had kept her captive for so many years. And she says in that moment, she felt God took over Brian Nichols' body. And she basically heard God saying, are you going to choose life or are you going to choose death?
Wow.
And that was the point beyond which she never touched that drug again. Yeah. Now, I've never touched drugs myself. If someone had a gun to my head and said, take this or I'm going to kill you, I can't tell you that I wouldn't take that drug. Yeah. You know, it's incredible that that was the moment beyond which she found purpose and she found a hope for a life beyond the darkest moment of her life. And I think it's the same thing for Brian Nichols. He had also run out of hope. He had been in jail already for a year, awaiting trial for rape. And even though he is now serving multiple life sentences in jail, I actually met his mother for the first time about two weeks ago. She said that he said very recently that he is where he is supposed to be, which is a really chilling thing to say. But in that moment when Ashley was reading your book to her, I truly believe that what was speaking to his spirit is he may have run out of credit here on earth, but there is a life beyond this life. And there is hope for him beyond this life. And to take yet another life in the shape of Ashley's would be just a further erosion of his own life. And so there was a hope of something beyond that situation they were in, even for him.
Wow. What do you think was actually the turning point? Let me ask it. What was the turning point, moment of hope for Ashley in this standoff? And what was the moment of hope, do you think, for Brian, where things clicked on?
Well, I think I'll start with Brian because on that day, Brian became a monster. He became a cold-blooded murderer. And it's, you know, I said I met Brian's mother 2 weeks ago, and she asked him, why did you do it? And he said that he had an incident where he was in a jail, shackled with a bunch of African-American prisoners, and an incident broke out, and they were all pepper sprayed. And he said in that moment, he had a flash of what it must have been like to be on a slave ship. And he went into a fugue state. And I believe he stayed in that fugue state until Ashley Smith treated him like a human being, looked at him with humanity and said, please don't kill me. And that was the moment beyond which he started to thaw. Whatever had taken him over, whether it was a demonic spirit or whether it was just the pain of whatever he had been through, there is no excusing what Brian Nichols did. And our film certainly is not an attempt to exonerate him. But in that moment, the humanity Ashley demonstrated to him stopped him in his tracks. I witnessed it. Brian Nichols' mother said to Ashley Smith, thank you for making my son pancakes. I mean, you know, when you think about what happened that day, for that to be the nature of the conversation between Brian Nichols' mother and Ashley is kind of extraordinary. And I think that was what stopped him in his tracks. And I think for Ashley, you know, when I became a Christian at the age of 16, it was outside of my religious experience. It was outside of what my upbringing. I felt God say to me, David, there is nothing you can do to make me love you less. And I truly believe it was a revelation of that fact in the midst of this event that started to turn things for Ashley. She had messed up so much that she felt she deserved death. And yet a new hope started rising up in her, partly because Brian was a mirror to her of how bad things can get without the Lord's intervention. And so, having been given a second chance beyond this event, it was the point beyond which she you know, to hear her say it, she didn't feel a pull towards meth again. You know, her eyes were open to the opportunity she was getting to be with her daughter again. So, you know, the Bible says, in your weakness, I am strong. In the weakest moment of her life, God's strength started to be demonstrated to her. And I truly believe that was the turning point.
You know, that's what you're saying. You know, everybody, when we go through these problems, we wonder, why are these happening to us? But often our greatest ministry comes out of our deepest pain, our deepest hurt. And it's interesting that one of the chapters that she read to Brian out of Purpose Driven Life was, you're shaped to serve God. And that's everything she's done since that moment. I mean, it literally turned the trajectory of her life, and she has used the way God shaped her to serve God and others. We've had her out here many times at Celebrate Recovery conferences and things like that. And she is serving God out of her pain.
Well, you know, I read your book way before I knew about this incident, The Purpose-Driven Life. And what I got out of that daily reading plan that book is that God's purpose for my life is so much bigger than any purpose I can envisage for myself. And I'm a pretty ambitious guy. I'm a guy who has
Great ambitions.
quite a bit of vision for myself. And so that revelation really spoke to me. And it's what happened that night for Ashley. I believe God's purpose for our lives is that we are to live lives where there is an overflow. His blessing should flow out of us and into the lives of others. And beyond, you know, to be in this drug addicted state, she was purely serving her own physiological needs, moment to moment. Beyond this event, she regained custody of her daughter. She's remarried with kids. She is a spokesperson for Celebrate Recovery. Thousands of people have gained inspiration from her story and what happened to her that night. Her purpose has become to be a blessing to other people. And here we are talking about a movie that has been made of her life, of this incident. The purpose is regenerating 10 years beyond the event. That was the purpose that she could never have seen for herself when she had already hit rock bottom. And so I truly believe that is the inspiration of this story, that what God sees for us far transcends what we could ever see for ourselves.
Wow, that's terrific. Let me ask you one last question. What do you want people to take away from this movie?
Well, I believe that, look, in Captive, we show a very extreme situation, a meth addict and a murderer. But in our lives, we may not be those things, but we all have things that we are captive to. We all have decisions we've made that we regret and we're ashamed of. We all have instances where we really hope and pray for a second chance. And this is an instance where these two people probably quite rightly felt they had run out of any second chances. When you watch the news, even now, or when you watched the news that day on March 11th of 2005, it is very easy to judge this killer. It is very easy to look at Ashley Smith's life and put her on the rubbish heap of life and say, why can't you just shake this thing, shake this drug habit and get your daughter back? But we all have things that we struggle to shake, and we all want that second chance, and God is there to offer it to us. You know, in what was said to me at the age of 16, there is nothing you can do to make me love you less. Jesus' blood shed for us on the cross is for us yesterday, today, and in the future. And so my hope is that people will come away from this film, wherever they may be, and to latch on to the fact that God loves them, there is a hope for them, there is forgiveness for them, there is redemption for them, and there is a future filled with purpose for them if they would just surrender to Him and allow Him to take the reins of their life.
Wow. Thank you so much, my friend. We love you at Saddleback. You can count on the fact that all of our 14 campuses will be praying for you, and we'll all be going to the opening of Captive, and we wish God's best on you and your marriage and on your career, and we look forward to the day, David, that you can come to Saddleback sometime when you're in Southern California.
I will be there before you know it. But thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it.
God bless you, David.
Bless you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.